Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and the new expansion for Hearthstone, Rise of the Shadows, is available to be viewed. It's not out quite yet, but we can see it in the collection. So we're going to look at all the new cards for the hero class of Mage this time. So to see it, you need to go into crafting mode, come over here and filter down just to Rise of Shadows. And then click include uncraftable cards because they can't be crafted yet, and then you have to go back into mage mode because I did that out of order. So that's that. So yeah, not yet released, can't be crafted with arcane dust. Most of these cards could be crafted after that point, but that would be the bad way for most people to get cards. Much better to buy packs using game gold or real money, if you're crazy enough to use real money on this game. So the first new card we're getting is a 1-mana spell called Magic Trick. Discover a spell that costs 3 or less. Discover is the mechanic where you are given 3 options. You pick one, and whatever you pick goes to your hand. This might be fine for a first turn for a mage in particular. There probably are only a couple of mage spell cards though that you would want. However, there are a couple of them, if they still are in standard, that would make a lot of sense. The secret that gives you immunity and makes it impossible for you to lose the game for 1 turn would be great if it cost 3 less and you had another copy. The Fire Blast spell card that does like 6 damage would be great if it costs 6 less. The ability to clone one of your minions would be good. This actually is a pretty good card, come to think of it, because there are quite a handful of spell cards that would help if you had a 3rd copy in your deck. And you can only have 2 cards in your deck unless it's a legendary, in which case you can only have one card in your deck. So getting that extra card via Discover actually would work pretty well in some scenarios, but it is pretty random, and most people who are trying to get to rank 1 legendary are not going to play cards that are random at all. Next we have a 1-mana spell called Ray of Frost. It's a twin spell, which means it can be cast once, then cast a second time. So for 1 mana, so cast once then cast a second time is probably the wrong way to describe it. You play the card and then you get a copy of the card in your hand, and then you can cast that second card for another 1 mana at any point in the future, as long as you still have that card. Ray of Frost freezes a minion. If it's already frozen, deals 2 damage to it. I'm not sure if Frost Mage is coming back. It probably should. Anything that powers up the mage is probably a good idea, because you're forced as a new player to play as mage, so new players should always feel very comfortable with it and should be able to play it pretty well. And so it should always be, I think the mage hero class should probably be right in the middle of the tiers as far as heroes to play. And then on one side of the mage should be hero classes that are very difficult to play but have a chance at a high success ratio if you understand them. And then on the other side there should be hero classes that are very easy to play but have a lower chance of succeeding if you don't understand them. And those other hero classes should move around, but I think mage, since it's the first thing you always play and the first thing you're going to get used to, should always be in the middle of that circle. Yeah, well, we'll have to see if we get any other frost or frozen elements that would work with that. Next we have a 2-mana 2 attack 2 health minion called Khadgar. I'm gonna say that's Khadgar. It's a legendary minion. Your cards that summon minions summon twice as many. Okay. This immediately brings in some problems depending on whether some of the other cards have gone into wild. As much as I just said nice things about the Mage, I'm going to say the worst thing about the Mage, and everybody has seen this. There's a way to get a Sorcerer's Apprentice on the field. Play a spell on it, which Sorcerer's Apprentice makes spells cost 1 less. Play a spell on that to make it summon a copy of the Sorcerer's Apprentice. So at that point, playing that spell would summon twice as many, so there would then be 3 Sorcerer's Apprentices on the field. So the next thing all you would really have to do is play Archmage Antonidas, who has an effect that whenever you cast a spell, you get a Fire Blast spell. So I believe Fire Blast spell, and I'm just going to pick a number here, I think it costs 4 mana. You've already got 3 mana reduced because of the 3 Sorcerer's Apprentices. You play another Sorcerer's Apprentice from your hand, that Fire Blast is free. And even before this card existed, to help this strategy, people were able to do that. And at that point, it does not matter if you have, or your opponent has, an infinite amount of health, frankly. They could have 100 health, which would be 30 maximum plus 70 armor. Doesn't matter at 1 bit, because you play a Fire Blast that does 6 damage for 0 mana. It triggers the Archmage Antonidas' spell to give you another free Fire Blast, and you just continuously cycle through Fire Blasts to the face of your enemy, and you can do an infinite amount of damage for free. And I have lost so many times to people playing that, and you have to play against that strategy if you're playing a Mage, always. It's been done over and over again. I think it's pretty crazy that this card is being added. My only hope is either Archmage Antonidas is going into wild or getting nerfed, or Sorcerer's Apprentice is going into wild or getting nerfed. Because right now this just makes that problem worse. And I don't like that idea. 1 bit. I hate losing to that strategy because it is cheap, it is lazy, and it feels awful because you have very little defense against it. You can be playing for 5 turns straight, taking no damage, hurting your enemy perfectly fine, and they'll pull out that card combination and win in 1 turn. Next we have a 2 mana, 1 attack, 3 health beast type minion called the Magic Dart Frog. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. Seems like we're getting quite a lot of effect minions. I'm not surprised about that. I imagine every new card we get for the hero class, specifically for every hero class, will be an effect minion. We may have some just standard cards with no effect in the neutral classes. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion. Yeah, it's a little overpowered, but not terrible for 1/3 at 2 mana. So it feels like everything is just going up the power curve in general with this new expansion. Next we have a 2 mana, 2 attack, 2 health minion, elemental type minion called the Mana Cyclone. It's of epic rarity, which doesn't really matter, but just means it costs more dust to craft it if you try to craft it. The only ones that matter are the legendaries, because you can only have 1 of the legendaries, whereas you can have 2 of the epics, or the commons, or the rares. Here's a rare. So the Mana Cyclone has a battle cry. For each spell you've cast this turn, add a random mage spell to your hand. This would probably work a lot better late game than early game. If you played this on the 2nd turn, you wouldn't have cast any spells probably at all. Now there is another minion that gets 1 attack for every spell you cast, so that would synergize well with this, and in general just getting more spells for the mage makes more sense. So far, and I imagine this will be the case for all of the mages, that they're not going to really introduce anything crazy. There's going to be Frost Mage, and then there's going to be Spell Mage as far as top tier meta decks to play as concepts, and then there'll probably be an Elemental Mage, and that'll be it, which is fine. Let's keep Mage simple. Let's not have crazy 10 card combinations that win in one turn for the mage. We can do that for all the other hero classes, but since mage is for the new players, let's just keep it simple and straight. Next we have a 3-mana spell called Conjurer's Calling. It's a twin spell, destroy a minion, summon 2 minions of that same cost to replace it. I don't know why you would want to do that, frankly. There's a couple of points where this might be helpful, but there's probably other spells that would just destroy a minion easier. Unless you can do something that would... Is there a way to summon a minion on your opponent's side that would do damage and have a death rattle to your opponent's hero? No, I don't think so. I don't think that would be worth it. On the other hand, I guess maybe you could try to randomly get Sorcerer's Apprentices doing this. And if you're playing this card alongside this card, well then you're going to get 4 minions of the same cost and potentially do that twice. So maybe there's some craziness between these two cards if you synergize them just to get a bunch of minions on the field while also casting spells, which I don't know. I guess I need to check if Shudderwalk is still a card that's playable, because I believe Shudderwalk is the card that cast all the spells you've cast in that game, and that would do something a little bit crazy. Next we have a 3-mana, 3-attack, 2-health beast type minion called Messenger Raven. It has a battle cry to discover a mage minion, which mage specific minion limits the randomization pool a lot more than just a random minion would, but not to any level where it would be consistent. So I don't think you probably play this very often. There's probably better mage cards out there. Next we have a 4-mana, 3-attack, 3-health minion called Kieran the Tricaster. Spell damage +3, your spells cost 1 more. I do believe this is the first minion to ever have spell damage +3. In fact, I'm not even sure that there is a spell damage +2 a minion out there. I've just seen a bunch of spell damage +1 cards and spell damage +5 on Malygos. Again, Malygos really not a card you'd want to play at the mage. One thing I would say about this is probably the first card that seems a little weak for this new expansion, and so that's applaudable that we're in the middle of looking at the 3 out of 9 hero classes, and every other card up until this point seems to have been pretty well thought out and at least worth considering. So I would say so far so good as far as their development of cards. They're not just putting out generic boring things. Now we might see all the generic boring things in the neutral cards, that could be the case, but so far so good. Next we have an 8-mana spell, discover a 6-cost minion, summon 2 copies of it. I suppose there might be a 6-cost minion where that makes sense, but you wouldn't be able to control it. You'd just be given 3 random options of 6-cost minions, and then you're going to summon 2 copies of it. So again, this feels kind of weak. Kind of weak. And the way this is phrased is a little weird, because as I understand the discover key phrase, I would pick a 6-cost minion. That card that I picked would go to our hand, and then it's gonna summon 2 copies of it. So am I gonna have 2 on the field and 1 in my hand? Because that's kind of what it's phrased like. But I imagine it really is gonna be I pick a card and I just get 2 copies on the field, which would just not be discover a 6-cost minion. Then it would be recruit recruit 2 copies of a minion. It should be the recruit key phrase, not the discover key phrase, depending on how this actually plays. Maybe if you were going to do it that way, you'd say draw 3 cards, or pick a card, recruit 2 copies of it. But you wouldn't want to just use pick a card. Finally, we have a 10 mana, 4 attack, 12 health, legendary dragon type minion called the Caligos. Your first spell each turn costs 0, battlecry, discover a spell. Interesting. Now the thing about dragons, and I say this almost every expansion, is dragons always feel like they do something, but it's usually something that just either benefits that specific minion or in no way synergizes with any other dragons. You will have a decent number of cards that say if you're holding a dragon, do something, even if that card is not a dragon itself. But the concept, I think, canonically, is dragons don't work well together. And it seems like they stick to that pretty well. So I've never really been able to justify making a dragon deck, and I've never seen anything that would make it seem like you'd win with a dragon deck. And even the daily quests, only on extremely rare occasions do you have a daily quest that says play 6 dragons. If ever. Maybe I dreamt that up. Okay, so that's the mage cards. A couple of them questionable, but what we need to check here is, here's the main card you would use if you were playing elemental mage. What we need to check here is Archmage Antonidas in standard? I don't believe I actually own him. Yes, I do. Wow, I must have gotten him relatively recently. So Archmage Antonidas, whenever you cast a spell, add a fireball spell to your hand. So let's come over this direction and find fireball. I guess it doesn't matter if here's fireball. Fireball is a 4 mana that deals 6 damage. So if you have Sorcerer's Apprentice, 4 Sorcerer's Apprentice on the field, this is a basic card too, so it's either going to get nerfed at some point, or it will always be that way, and it probably will be that way. Here's another card. Choose a friendly minion, summon a copy of it. Yeah, they're making it worse, not better, for people who have to play against mage players. Sorcerer's Apprentice is a 2 mana spell that's a classic card. Your spells cost 1 less. So yeah, they've just made that 1-turn kill way more. Here's Mana Worm. Whenever you cast a spell, gain +1 attack. All cards that anybody who's ever played against a mage or played a mage should know. Even something like this would double the number of minions, so you'd have 4 0/2s with taunts. As far as 0 mana spells though, or 0 mana things, no, nothing like that seems available. Yeah, so with none of the cards in it to in that card combination to destroy the Archmage Antonidas combo, the one turn kill that it is. Playing against Mage is going to be a nightmare. It's going to be even worse than before, and that's unfortunate. Hopefully maybe there are some other cards that come out and about that help play against the Mage, or maybe we'll just find that even people who do play Mage still end up losing more often than they win. But yeah, if you are going to play Mage, if you are a new player, unfortunately my suggestion is to use the Archmage Antonidas strategy and do it as much as possible. And it's probably never been a better time to play as a Mage or play as a new player for this expansion, because yeah, Mage seems like it's getting a pretty big power buff for kind of no reason, and to do the same things, where ideally what I would want to see on Mage is all new strategies. I would love to see people playing Mage and playing completely different cards for completely different reasons. And frankly, there's a lot of cards in the Mage collections in particular that just never get played because they don't synergize with anything and they don't make any sense. So if there was a way to play those specific cards and make it make more sense, that would be great. Well, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.